Hello everyone and welcome to this first video on combating soil erosion. I'm going to present this video as a case study, which I will go through the process of combating soil erosion that I followed in this particular case. So I hope you will enjoy this video and find it interesting and helpful in implementing these methods in your own projects. So, what is soil erosion? Soil erosion is often man-made, and then we call this accelerated soil erosion because soil erosion does happen naturally, but through our mismanagement of our properties or land that we manage, we can actually accelerate the rate of soil erosion, and that is why we call it accelerated soil erosion. This happens through many different mechanisms, and there are many reasons for this, but most often than not you will find that mismanagement of the land and the plants on your land actually cause the soil to be bare and soil erosion to occur. The negative impact of this soil erosion is obviously on the land value. It reduces the land use potential of that land in the long run, and also the production of that land. You can have a bare piece of land with little plant cover and little food for animals, which will cost you money in feeding your animals and to sustain them on that land, where you could have actually sustained them from the natural resources that could have occurred if you actually managed the soil erosion and the plants on your property. Most people do know about soil erosion, but little care is actually given, or little thought is actually given to soil erosion as such. So you will have owners of properties that have a small piece of in a corner somewhere of the property that are prone to erosion, but it's not actually affecting them financially. So who cares? I mean, that piece of land, yes, why should we actually introduce soil erosion control on that piece of land? It's going to cost us money, and we will have nothing in return for that. So that's a attitude towards this problem that I often found in my work experience. So hopefully through this video I can show you some cost-effective methods to actually combat soil erosion that can help improve your land value and your production on your land. So let us quickly look at what we will be covering in this video. Firstly, what I want to do is I'm going to discuss a specific case and the problem that I had to deal with in this specific case. So I'm going to discuss the terrain, what the terrain is like, what the soil is like, the extent of the erosion systems on this land, and just generally talk about the situation on the ground as I found it. Then we are going to look at what needs to be done to effectively combat the soil erosion, and we're going to discuss what methods we could apply. But to do this, we also have to consider the financial situation and the funds available to us, but of course this also will dictate what methods we can actually use and what are out of context in this situation, because we have to look at the funds we have and we have to look at the situation on the ground to actually decide what methods we are going to use. And then we are going to go out and do it, and I'm going to show you some pictures of what I did and explain what I did, and hopefully this will help in gaining some insight in your own problem. And then I'm going to discuss some methods that we can actually use to monitor the methods that we applied to see if what we did actually works, if it's going to work, or if we are wasting our time. So we should just have a way of evaluating our progress. Okay, and this is just a quick overview of the site that I have selected or that I have been working on. you can see the, let me just, you can see my cursor here on the screen. This is just three points that I use to monitor what the progress. Like I've said, the red lines indicate the flow of the water, or the downslope. Yeah, so this is just the overview of the area that has been affected by soil erosion, and the area that I was rehabilitating. But to actually give you a good idea of what it looks like, I'm going to jump into a program called QGIS. It's a geographical information system that's free to download. I'm not going to discuss that in this video, but it's free to download, and it's a very powerful tool to actually visualize the topography and for general mapping purposes. So let's jump into QGIS, and I will show you what the situation, or what the topography of the land is, and what the problem were that I have encountered. Okay, so now we are in QGIS. I've created a 3D map here. I will give a link in the description below to the download page for QGIS, and I will also give some links to tutorials that will show you how to do this, to set up this 3D map that I have. I'm not going to discuss it in this video, and you do not need this software to actually do something about the soil erosion on your property. Just a bit of common sense and knowledge of the terrain will be just as good in determining where to start. This is just for me to show you what the terrain looks like, as you cannot be there in person to see it for yourself. So the terrain, let me first start by showing where I have done the rehabilitation work, or the soil erosion control. It was done in this section, as you can see indicated by my cursor on the screen, following that road, about 100 to 150 meters up the road, coming down and across again up until we meet that road. So it's a small piece like this. That is the piece that I chose for my rehabilitation work in this case. The terrain, as you can see, there's two hills on this side, a ridge or a hill running along this way, and a hill on that side with a little neck here where this road goes through. Then we have a drainage line here, which means that this water is going to run from this hill downward to the drainage line, and on the other side we also have a little hill there. So this is what the terrain looks like, more or less. You can see it does have some slope, not that much, but at least you can you'll have a lot of water accumulating momentum on this piece of land. So yeah, you can expect quite a problem if that area is left barren. The geology of this area, these hills are leucogneiss. It's a sort of a granite. So this is the geology of the area. The soil on this upper part of the area that I have rehabilitated, you have a very rocky soil, shallow soil with a lot of rocks in. And as you go down, this area is a very it's a sand loam soil, so it's a very deep soil, but also very prone to erosion. And in the drainage line there's a lot more sand, but also still a sandy loam soil. So it's a very good soil for actually grass production. But if you have that soil being washed away, it doesn't mean much. The historic, or the problem in this area, was historic overgrazing. So that's what caused the soil to be barren. Furthermore, vegetation, it's a mopane veld, so there's a lot of mopane trees and a lot of purple pot cluster leaf trees, and it's very dense. It became densified once again because of the lack of grass and overgrazing that caused bush densification, among other things. Obviously it's not just that, but The reason that I chose this section here is first of all to prove that soil erosion control can be done cost effectively without costing a lot of money to the owners. And then you usually, what you want to do when you are faced with a problem like this is you want to start and fix the problem itself rather than just treat the symptoms. Up here on this part there are very little gullies. The water is starting to run here downwards, so up here there's not much momentum yet, but as you go down slope you start to gain momentum and gullies start to form. As the water gains momentum, it starts to gaining more force and washing away soil. So what you want to do is you want to start to slow down the water at the beginning or at the start of the problem, and not just go down here and fill up some gullies and hope for the best. You want to start actually treating the problem and then work your way down and treating the effects of the problem or the damage the problem have created over time. So you also want to increase the water infiltration, and that is also one of the objectives of this methods that I'm applying here, and that is to actually increase water infiltration. And that is also a reason for starting at the top, start increasing the water infiltration at the top, which will affect the water momentum that it will gain if there were no infiltration at the top. I mean, it's quite a logic thing to say that if you have less water running down, there will be less momentum for that water, and you'll have also positive effects down slope if you start at the top. So that's what I did. I started at the top and I'm working my way down towards this gully. So this is more or less what the terrain looks like. I'm going to jump back into the slideshow and show you some pictures of what this area looked like before we started the rehabilitation. Okay, so now that we have seen what the area looks like in QGIS, I think we can just view a few photographs to quickly just visualize what the area looks like in general on the ground. This picture shows gullies, or a gully. There are a couple of them across the area that I've treated. This is more or less what it looks like. It's been created over the years as water slowly but surely take away pieces of the topsoil. So this is one example of a gully on the area. This is a picture showing what the area looks like in general. It's a barren piece of land. There's little to no grass growing. Another way that you can actually see the soil erosion that has occurred on this area is by looking at the small pedestals that the trees are growing on, or the plants are growing on. Even the small perennial shrubs, forbs, have a little pedestal that they are standing on, and that is because the area around the plant has been stabilized by the plant roots, and all of the areas that are not stabilized by plant roots and left bare are just eroded and washed away. So that is what's happening here. Another thing that you can see here is a crust forming. You can see this area here as a thick crust that formed here over time. So what happens in this case is rain drops hit bare ground, and that dislodges small and fine soil particles that get suspended in the water, and as the water infiltrates into the soil, these little soil particles clog up the pores that is open in the soil and let water infiltrate. So over time these little fine soil particles clog up the surface and form a crust, as you can see here. This is an interesting thing that happened that I photographed on this site. A tree fell into the gully that I showed you earlier. If you remember this gully, a tree fell into the gully, and actually you can see this This photo is just upstream from where I stood when I took this photograph. You can see there is a piece of tree that's lying in the gully. This side is completely still open and it's still a gully. And on the other side, upstream, you can see leaves and other uh, debris have created a natural silt wall and started to block the soil particles that have been dislodged and are being washed down this gully and started to fill up. You can see this is just on the other side. This side is still a deep gully. That side is almost filled up. So uh, notice the grass that's growing on this side compared to this side. This side is still a gully, still open, fewer grasses than on this side. The side is filled up and a lot of grass growing on this side, showing what a small thing like just blocking or just creating a silt wall can do for erosion control. The side is still barren and open, and this side has been filled up. So now, after we have viewed these pictures, I think we should have more or less a good idea what the area looks like. It's barren, crusted, um, it's sloped. We have to deal with water velocity or water momentum coming down slope. So all these things we can keep in mind when we start to discussing what methods we are going to actually use. And so I think we should jump into that and let's start explaining what methods are we going to use and how we're going to apply them. Okay, so now we can start looking at the methods that we applied to remedy this problem that I have stated before in this video. We are going to explain firstly what the financial situation was. As I said earlier, the financial situation will also influence the choice of methods that we are going to apply. Firstly, there were no financial input into this project, so I had the idea I wanted to prove that there are not a lot of money or a lot of funds needed to actually apply very effective soil erosion control methods, and this was the whole reason for doing this soil erosion control project. So the methods that I chose then to use is firstly to cover the area with hollows. So you create little hollows in the ground to slow down the water flow and increase infiltration into the soil. Then secondly, I constructed silt walls by making use of the rocks in the area. There are a lot of hills and obviously a lot of rocks also in the area that we can just pick up and use as construction material for these silt walls, which I will show you in a bit. All of these points I'm going to explain in more detail further down in the video. And we also make use of the branches in the area. As I said, it's a very densely overgrown area. So there's a lot of branches and stuff that we can use to actually cover the area with branches and prevent animals from trampling it and feeding on the new growth. So in a way protecting the grasses and plants that are germinating. All these methods that I just listed here can be found in various literature sources, so I will have a reference list at the end of this video for further reading if you wish to do so. So let's start by looking at the hollows. So the hollows are just little holes that you make with a spade or with a pick and a spade, depending on how hard the soil is. But you just make a little hollow and start on the upslope side, stick in the spade and throw the soil on this side, creating a sort of a wall or a heap of soil on this side, preventing the water from flowing further downstream. So the water will be coming through here, accumulating in this little hollows, infiltrate because it cannot flow further, and as the water comes down and maybe miss one of the hollows, it will catch one further down. This slows down the water speed, it increases the infiltration, and it accumulates plant seeds, grasses, and other forbs to start to grow. So there is the general pattern of um, the hollows. You have a first row, and just below them you have the second row. Uh, whenever the water misses the first row, it will be caught up in the second or the third row, as you can see on this sketch. Okay, and there is another picture showing what the area looks like after it has been covered by hollows. Um, you can see there's a lot of mopane trees here that can be used for brush packing later on. The water is coming down from up there and it's flowing in this direction, and all over this area it's going to accumulate and start to infiltrate into the soil, increasing the soil moisture at the end of the day. There is a picture showing the effects of the hollows. You can see it will eventually in a year or two be completely closed as soil is washed into these hollows. But for now, you can see it's doing a fantastic job in actually catching the water and allowing it to infiltrate into the soil. Secondly, we are going to construct silt walls. There you can see a picture on the left side of a silt wall. It's just a small wall of rocks. Now you might think that there's a lot of holes in that silt wall. Yes, but as you can see, there's also a lot of leaves here lying around, and those leaves are going to clog up those little holes and eventually make it a very effective and solid silt wall that will catch any water that's actually still accumulating in this gully and started to flow down. There's another picture of a silt wall. Eventually, as I said, it will fill up and plants will start to germinate and grow and cover the area and start to take over that job of the silt wall in time. Here's another picture showing you silt walls in a small gully, just to slow down the water and help to increase the infiltration. Then thirdly, we are going to use brush packing. As you can see, brush packing is a simple method of just placing branches on top of the soil. There's a picture showing the branches that was placed. Now, this is also a picture of what I use to monitor this area, which I will come to later. But you can see the grasses and plants starting to grow in the area that we have treated. But brush packing basically works in the way you cut down pieces of branches and place them diagonally to the flow of the water, so they can actually prevent the water from flowing. They prevent splash erosion by breaking up the drops that's falling onto the soil surface when it's raining, and they prevent animals from feeding on the new growth of plants and grasses that's starting to germinate. It's very uncomfortable for them to stick their heads down into this branches, and so they just tend to avoid it. They also tend to avoid the area and do not trample the grass and the plants that's starting to grow. So this is just the methods that I have applied. I will show you now the results that have been achieved and discuss further what these methods do and show the effects of these methods. Just before I jump into the results of this project, just as a little side note, or actually a addition to what I've said earlier, this is a small table that I made just to sum up what it's actually costs in time and in resources to do this rehabilitation project. It was done in about 500 man hours. Now, 1 man hour is the amount of work that one person can do per hour. So I have estimated that during this time, taking the hollows, which obviously took the longest to create that one laborer could do about 30 square meters of area in an hour. So that equates to about 15 days to complete with 4 laborers. So this is about the time that it took to do this rehabilitation project. Then obviously you have spades, picks, pangos required. I had a tractor and a trailer available to pick up the rocks, and another thing that I used when doing this project is to actually bring in some of the branches and vegetation that was cut away from roads and fences, load them on the trailer, and also take them to the rehabilitation area, and to use also those branches in brush packing the area. And then we used obviously rocks and branches. So this is just a quick overview of what resources were used in this project. Okay, so now we can have a look at the results of this rehabilitation project. This is, for me, the most rewarding part of the whole project, is looking back and seeing what you have achieved. We should also remember that we are not bringing this piece of land to its prime condition, but rather starting the rehabilitation process or the healing process of this land. What I have here is the picture that I showed earlier, but what I want to emphasize now is this numbers and this letters written down here. This is also the method that I use to evaluate my progress. There are different methods to use. I used photography, which means you simply take pictures before and after, and every year after that to see the change in vegetation. That is a very, very helpful and a recognized way of actually comparing rehabilitation over a couple of years. So firstly, this numbers 1, 2 and 3 only shows where the pictures were taken. I haven't taken before and after pictures of this as such. I only took pictures that I showed you before, which shows this whole area was absolutely barren. There were no grasses, or very, very little grasses growing, especially not good leaf producing grasses that can be used for grazing. And this point down here that is named FP, that means just short for fixed point. What that means is I placed a fixed point camera there, or fixed point location for a camera to be set up in the exact same position every time I need to take a picture. So I took a before picture and the after picture at that point, which you will see in the upcoming photos. So this is number 1. Remember number 1, where this point is. This is how it looked after the rehabilitation process have been done, and after we had about 320 millimeters of rain. This area is a semi-arid savanna region in South Africa, so 321 millimeters of rain is a average amount of rain, and that is the result. As you can see, there's an enormous amount of grasses that grew and germinated over this short period. You can still see the branches that we have placed here, and this whole area was covered by holes. So this grasses grew in the holes and on the side of the holes, everywhere that we actually loosened the soil a bit and gave them chance to germinate. This is on point number 2. If you look at point number 2, where that is, it is over here. Also, a lot of grasses germinated. I want you to pay particular attention to the grass. The trees, obviously, they were there. They didn't germinate and started to grow during this season, but the grass definitely did. There were no grass before, and you can see there's even some good leaf producing grasses growing here, which will be very helpful in the long run. Obviously we have a lot of pioneer species at this stage, but that is totally fine. They will be replaced by more sturdy, stronger decreaser grasses or climax grasses in the future. So this is a very good progress so far. That's point number 3. You can see point number 3 is here. That is how point number 3 looks. Also very good rejuvenation. Notice how many grasses is actually standing within, growing within the little hollows that we made. So the hollows is definitely helping in creating the right place or the right conditions for grasses to germinate and start to grow. This is the fixed point that I mentioned before. This is the fixed point area. This is the before picture on the fixed point area, and again the after picture. Notice on this area, this fixed point area is just outside the area that we covered with hollows. The area that we covered with hollows, you can see on this picture, just ends there. This is still during the process of making the hollows. So this area that was covered in hollows, it goes up a little bit further and comes down here again. But this point is just outside the area covered in hollows, and you can see grass is growing in the gully that was there before. You can also see it's silted up more, and overall it looks better than the previous year. But on the other side, you can see here where nothing is done, no hollows were created, also no grasses germinated. And that is a very important thing to learn from this case study, is that you need to actually break the crust and create places for favorable places for grasses to germinate, as we did here. Everywhere we actually created a favorable place for grass to germinate, they did so. So it is important to notice this. And I think overall this project got off to a good start, and will go even better from now on, and start, going through the natural process of succession and rehabilitating. And this brings us to the end of this video. I hope that this video was helpful and that you can implement some of these methods in your own projects. As I promised before, I will give you the references of some further reading that you can do on this matter. And these are the 4 references that I think is a very good place to start in actually finding some practical techniques for your particular area. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to this channel. If you have any questions, please leave us a comment below. If you have any suggestions also, please do not hesitate to leave a comment below. This is the first video that I'm making for this channel, so there's a lot of room for improvement in the future, but please do leave us a comment. That will help me in improving and creating more content for this channel. Thank you for watching. Until next time.